right, hello again, everybody. I'm Josh Cook, sports editor at the News and Tribune, and I'm joined right now by Daniel McDonald, the head coach of the Providence football team. Daniel, you're about to enter year 6. We were just talking. It's just flown by for you.
It has flown by, especially when you think about, when I got hired by Providence, my oldest son was in kindergarten. My youngest son hadn't even started school yet, and now here they both are. My oldest is going to play, for our 6th grade football team. My youngest is going to play for our 4th grade football team, and I feel like I blinked, and here we are. So, time is fleeting.
But it's been quite a 6 years for you, or quite a first 5 years anyway. So, defending state champs in Class A. How does that sound?
There's a bit of a balance between wanting to, treasure that, wanting to look back on it and say, yeah, we did that. We accomplished something. That was awesome. Our players played extremely well. My coaching staff just absolutely got after it. But, there's a balance between, yes, that was awesome, and we got to look forward to next season now.
We already turned the page. Obviously, we're in July, almost to August at this point. So the season's just a little bit more than a month away. So it'll be here before we know it.
Coming up quickly. I mean, we have basically 2 more weeks of the summer, and then we're into the official start of football season.
Yeah. All right, let's take it back to the beginning for you, Daniel. You're from Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up there. Attended St. Athanasius, right?
Yep.
First or K? Did you go K through 8 there?
I think I went 1st through 8th or 2nd through 8th,
Okay.
something
Right.
like that.
You had some really good teachers there, including my mom,
Including your mom.
and Mike Hicks, and some other ones. My aunt was Sherry Wolf. She taught there as well.
Yep.
And then went to high school at Wagner.
Louisville Wagner. Yep.
And then tell me about that. You played football.
Played football and baseball at Wagner. It was a situation where my dad was the school resource officer there, and I always grew up a private school kid. Always went to a Catholic school, and finances kind of fell through to go to another Catholic high school, and my dad was already at Wagner, so the principal approaches him like, just bring him here. And it turned out really well for me. I had a good high school football and baseball career, did well academically, and life works out the way it's supposed to be. And ended up, I got some offers to go play football and baseball. Chose to play baseball in college, and went over here to IUS and really made the most of it and really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, tell us about that.
The coach that recruited me was Josh Schultz. He was at IUS for 4 or 5 years, I think. He actually when he was recruiting me, he never actually watched me play baseball until after they had already offered me. They offered me based on watching me play football. So it was actually.
We got to take a step back. Sorry, I forgot to ask. What positions did you play in football and in baseball as well?
Played quarterback in football. In high school, I was a catcher. Then once I got to college, we had like 7 catchers, and I don't think I was better than hardly any of them. But I saw that we had 1 first baseman, so I said, I'm going to go play over there. Maybe I can get on the field a little bit quicker. So switched to first base and played first base and a little bit of outfield, and did a little bit of the designated hitting while I was in college. And I always tell people, in college we had some guys who could play some ball. I mean, I was a decent player, but we had some guys who could flat out play. And our cleanup hitter was a guy who I think hit 34 home runs his senior year, and I followed that. I was the 5-hole hitter behind that guy. So I didn't hit a ton of home runs. I was more of a doubles into the gap kind of guy, and he clears the bases, and my job was to start us back up.
All right. So then after college, what's next?
After college, what did I do? I think I coached while I was in college with my dad at the middle school level for a year or 2. And then right after college was over, I think I took a 5th year to finish everything up, and I coached at Bullitt East for a season. I think I was 21 or 22. Coached at Bullitt East for a season, kind of thought I knew everything after that. Wagner opens up, of course, my alma mater, and if that job opened up, and immediately I think I might be able to pull that off. I applied for it, interviewed, they offered me the job, and here I was 22 years old, and I got hired to be a head football coach. I'm barely older than my players. Some of my players were pushing 19 years old.
Yeah.
So, everything works out the way God plans it to. I had a lot to learn. I had to let some grass grow under my feet. I was only there for a year before I realized maybe I should go learn how to actually coach a little bit. So I went to Seneca High School over in Louisville for a few years after that. I think I was there for 3 years. I was the offensive coordinator for 2 of those 3 years. After Seneca, I played for Chris Wolf at Male. Mm-hmm. Or I'm sorry, I played for Chris Wolf is at Male. I played for him at Wagner. Mm-hmm. And we had always talked about, well, why don't you just come work for me? Chris and I had always talked about coming over there, and then I pulled the trigger, and we meet at a Buffalo Wild Wings of all things, and he's like, I'm thinking he's gonna want me to coach his quarterbacks, or coach the running backs or the receivers or whatever. He says none of those spots are open. So what do you need me for? He said, I need you to coach defensive line. And at first I was a little bit taken aback because I didn't play D-line. I didn't coach D-line any of my stops I'd been. I'd always been more of an offensive guy. I coached DBs at Bullitt East, but D-line, that's a little different. So, but I ended up saying, all right, if I'm going to be a head coach again one day, I need to learn all these positions. Mm-hmm. So I ended up coaching D-line, learned a ton from him that first year, and he did a really good job of coaching me up, which is what I try to do with my coaches now. He gave me all the resources I needed, the DVDs, the coaching clinics, the coaching manuals, gave me everything I needed to really learn that system, taught me his system. And then the next year, he moves me to linebackers and gives me the D coordinator position. And basically says, here's the system. You make it your own. You run with it. You're going to call the defense. I want you to reinstall everything with our defense the way, for all intents and purposes, the way you want to do it. Mm-hmm.
And you're still a young guy here. You're still
at the time, I think I was 26, 27. Yeah. And I really kind of wore that as a badge of honor. Like, here we are, the kind of storied program that Male is, and Coach Wolf is known as a defensive guy, and he just gave me the keys to this Ferrari. I better not wreck it. So kind of made the system a little bit of my own. Kept the core principles the same, but to Coach Wolf's credit, he trusted a 26, 27-year-old dude with his defense and said, make it your own and run it, and I went with it. I think I was the D coordinator there for 2 or 3 seasons. I can't remember. And then, the Providence job opens up, and I interviewed at 2 places that offseason. I interviewed at Providence, and I interviewed at John Hardin down in Elizabethtown. Mm-hmm. And I was really, really sold on that John Hardin job. I mean, Hardin County, good school system. E-Town's a good place to live.
Usually good talent in that area.
Usually good talent in that area. John Hardin is a great school. In my mind, I interviewed really well. Thought I really impressed the committee. We had gotten to where we were talking plans for, program finances and teaching positions and things of that nature. It really built a good rapport with their administration, I felt. And I ended up getting a call saying, Coach, it came down to you. And then a guy who had won several state championships decided to apply. You can't turn that guy down. You don't turn that guy down for an unproven D coordinator. So I was really bummed about that, and then lo and behold, Providence wants to interview me. And I was familiar with Providence. We always played them when I was at Wagner. Mm-hmm. So I interview, and I didn't really know my way around the Providence dynamic. I played baseball at IUS for all intents and purposes, lived in New Albany those 4 years. But once I kind of got my lay of the land there, and the administration in the interview process explains how things work to me, I'm like, what, we can do something here. This could be a really good spot for us. At the time I was teaching in JCPS, I wasn't happy at all teaching in Louisville. And I don't know if I've told a lot of people this, I really became so disenfranchised with teaching in the public school system that if I didn't get the Providence job, I was done with education. I was going to go, I had taken the classes to be a loan originator, and I was going to go do that. I was done. I was going to try to coach a little bit, but I was done teaching. So, God answers prayers a lot of times, and he answered a prayer for me. Mindy Ernstberger calls and says, we'd like to get more serious about getting you over here. Mm-hmm. And, we talked contract and finances and how things were going to run, where I was going to teach. And next school year, here I
am. What made you want to be a coach?
It really stems from, that's a two-pronged question. What made me want to coach and what made me want to be an educator? A lot of people don't know this story, so here we go. I was always very privileged to play for really good coaches in all the sports I played. At Wagner, I played for Chris Wolf my freshman and sophomore year, and then Willie Foster comes in when Chris leaves for PRP. Willie Foster comes in, and great guy, great coach. I think he's now the superintendent at either Spencer County or Anchorage Public Schools out there. So he's done it really well for himself. And those two guys really made me want to get into coaching. Matt Walker and Lee Walker were my baseball coaches. Both phenomenal human beings, phenomenal coaches. And you kind of look up to those guys and you think, if I can be like those guys and do what they did for me, for someone else, maybe that'll work out for me. Mm-hmm. From an education standpoint, I'll never forget, Kentucky has this program called the Governor Scholar Program. Mm-hmm. And I applied for it. At the time I had a 4.0 GPA. I was
in high school, you applied for it,
yeah. Yeah, when I was in high school. And basically what that was at the time was, if you get this, your college is, for all intents and purposes, paid for. Mm-hmm. Now there are some stipulations and some strings or whatever, but, so I applied for it thinking, okay, 4.0 GPA, involved in the XYZ clubs, 2-sport athlete. I think I've got a pretty good shot at this. Mm-hmm. And man, for whatever reason, I think 9 people at my school get it except for me. Wow. I'm like, what's going on here? This doesn't make any sense. So I was pretty bummed about that. And like the typical teenager, I didn't see the forest for the trees, or the trees for the forest, whatever the expression is. And I had football coaches from Yale coming in like 2 days later to recruit me. They were flying in from Connecticut to talk to me, and a teacher by the name of Gary Stewart. He was my junior English teacher. He knew I was having a hard time. Like, why did I not get this? But there's 9 other people in this school better than me. Mm-hmm. Kind of letting my ego get in the way, right? And he pulls me out of class, and he's like, I just need you to take a walk with me. All right, whatever. That's kind of weird, but okay. And he says, dude, I need you to get your head out of your rear end. What's he talking about? He doesn't understand. He said, you understand you have Yale coming in to talk to you, and how big of a deal that is? Stop this moping around. Stop all this nonsense, and understand what God has blessed you with. So what? You don't get Governor's Scholar. You understand how much bigger of a deal Yale is? I mean, and it had nothing to do with his classroom teaching. Great teacher. Mm-hmm. But that's the kind of the moment where I said, the world needs more people like that. So I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, mm-hmm. until I figured out that I don't really do well with blood. So, at that point I kind of pivot. I'm like, maybe I can do this education thing, and maybe I can get into coaching, and we'll see where this goes. So, long story short, signed with IUS, major in education, emphasis on English language arts, and played baseball there and got into coaching, and here we are.
All right, so then we got to Providence, so then you landed at Providence, mm-hmm. and then rich tradition over here, as you mentioned. Gene Sartini was the head coach forever. Won an insane amount of games, coached for 50 years, something like that. So
long time.
The tradition coming in. But yeah, what did you get to know at that point?
Before I interviewed, I watched a lot of their games. I think Glycott at that point was still putting, a lot of their games on YouTube. So I watched, several years worth of their games, kind of got my feet wet with what kind of talent they had that would be coming back. And but in the process, I learned about this deanery feeder program we had, mm-hmm. and how we just kind of needed to unify it. We had to get all the coaches from the bottom up on the same page. we had to get a more vertically aligned program from the top down, and just a clear communication, clear message that this is the way we're going to do things, and this is how we're going to build a program, not a team. We're going to build a program from the bottom up. I remember that first year. I've told this story, but I don't really like to broadcast it out there. But my first meeting with my players was right before COVID. We had 14 guys show up. So I come from Male High, where we're 120, 130 players in the program, to 14. And they weren't 14 big dudes. It was 14 guys who needed the weight room. So, there was a bit of not a culture shock, but there was a bit of a shock there. Like, am I making the right decision? But God bless those kids. I mean, most of them are in college now, or will have graduated from college. They fought, they battled, they worked hard. We end up dressing that first game against Floyd. I think you covered it. We dressed like 27 kids, and 13 of them were freshmen. And it was 27 kids who had very wrinkly football pants. And when you have wrinkly football pants, that means you're not a very big kid. So I'm looking out at Floyd, 105, 110 players, and there's my 13 freshmen, and my 27 players, 13 freshmen, and to those kids' credit, they battled. I mean, I think it was a 14-7 game at half. So I mean, eventually Def took over, and Floyd played really well, and I think they beat us 49-7 or 49-14 or something to that effect. But I knew that the culture was in the right direction there, because I knew those kids were going to battle no matter the circumstances, and that would have been the class of 21, I believe. Jackson Murphy, Jeremy Gettlefinger, those guys, David Wall, who really kind of laid the foundation and bought into what I wanted to do, and laid the foundation for the success that we've enjoyed recently.
And then go from there, from year 2, year 3.
Man, it's all kind of blurring together now. But I remember year 2, we start that year off. A lot of my freshmen were now sophomores. Well, all the freshmen were sophomores. They all passed.
And who are some of those guys?
Carter Lannon, Cade Unruh, Nolan Finnegan, Brian Wall, that bunch, Luke Kruger, Connor said, God, I could still to this day name all 13 of them. And I'm thinking these guys are pretty talented. We started off that year with Bethlehem over in Kentucky. We traveled down to Bardstown, and this ended up being like Bethlehem's best team ever. And I fell into the trap of thinking these guys are athletic, we're going to be okay, and they were still just babies. They were sophomores. And we got bullied around a little bit. We got pushed around. And I think that game combined with the Holy Cross game the next week, where I think Holy Cross got us like 49-6 or 38-6 or something. I think those two games really opened those guys' eyes to, we need to get bigger and stronger. We need to really buy in and dive into the weight room. And of course, that class, the Brian Wall and that bunch end up, they're one play away, not one play away. They end up being a couple plays away from potentially playing for a state championship, if not for the Indy Lutheran train that rolled through. So I think we go 4-6, 5-6 back-to-back years, and I knew that if Providence had patience with our plan, and the Providence community had patience with us, that we were going to build something pretty solid here. So that third year, that ends up being Preston Kemp's sophomore year in that bunch, Lucas Thomas, Cooper Ross, that bunch.
That's when Preston had to come in and play quarterback for several games.
Carter ended up breaking his wrist. So Preston comes in and plays quarterback, and the Preston that we saw as a sophomore wasn't senior Preston. I mean, he was good, he was athletic, but he was a sophomore, but he played really well. Kept the ship afloat. I think we ended up going 8-3 that year, our first sectional championship since I had been there. And then we ended up reeling off 3 in a row and going to state that Preston senior year.
Yeah, you went to that year, Preston sophomore year, go to Indy Lutheran, get I think it was 49-7 or something like that. But
yeah, that would have been Preston's sophomore year, Carter's junior year. They steamrolled us a little bit. They were really, really good. a good football team too, but they were historically good. I think we went 8-3 that year, I believe, sectional championship. So then you fast forward to Carter and that bunch's senior year.
Yeah, Indy Lutheran goes on to win the state title, obviously.
Yeah.
And
Won it running away.
yeah.
And, you know, it sounded kind of arrogant at the time, but I told my guys, like, you're playing the state championship right now against Indy Lutheran. And that ended up being, for the most part, pretty true. I mean, they steamrolled their way through the rest of the playoffs. So one thing we did was, I'm not usually a big fan of doing things like this, but that off season we put Indy Lutheran's logos on our squat racks. We hadn't built the new weight room at the time.
Okay.
And we kind of focused on that's the team. If we want to, we got to beat that team. So the next season, next off season, you know, the guys that are playing multiple sports, I tell them go get away, go play multiple sports, go be, you know, all around athletes. And the rest of those guys got in the weight room and worked hard. I mean, our weight room at the time was a dungeon, but those guys worked hard. You know, we can see our new weight room being built, and you know, eventually that summer we get in that new weight room, and you know, and we were blessed with some talent, some guys who really wanted to work hard, and it comes down to us at Indy Lutheran again, and this time it's 14-7. I mean, we closed that gap on them pretty well. You know, I hate that, you know, Carter Lannon, Eli Theobald, that bunch, I hate that they had to go out that way in a loss, because those guys had the talent to be state champions, and they had the work ethic to be state champions. And lo and behold, again, like, that game ended up being, for all intents and purposes, the state final.
Yeah, because Indy Lutheran goes on, wins it again.
Yeah, I think they won it by a couple, if not 3 touchdowns. So thank goodness Lutheran moves up, Adams Central moves up, and we're still in 1A. And this group, Preston's group, are now seniors.
And that was a great class you lost. It was Luke Crewer, Kate Under, and all those other guys you mentioned. I mean, that was a super great class. Kind of took you to the next level. Maybe it got you up to that state level.
Yeah, I think at that point, kind of a funny story. South Putnam was kind of one of those teams like us that was just, you know, their season had been ended by Lutheran several years in a row. So they see Lutheran move up to 2A, and they're kind of like us, like, okay, we can do something now. And I end up talking to their head coach at a coaching clinic, and he's very complimentary. He's a good dude. He's very complimentary of us, our program, and he meant it as a compliment, and I took it as a compliment at the time. He goes, Coach, you all have kind of got a target on your backs now. And of course, you and I know that's a compliment. Like, thanks for noticing us. But my players don't know he meant it that way. So I go back to our team when it's time to get back together in the summer, and I'll tell them, like, listen to what this coach said about you. You know, and I mean that as no offense to South Putnam, and of course their coach is a good dude, but whatever you can do to motivate your players, right? And the idea is, well, they're going to put a target on our backs. Let's put a target on everyone else's chest, and let's just go right at them. And that was kind of our attitude the whole season, was put the target on their chest. And that season wasn't without its hiccups. I mean, you know, we end up week 1.
Started slowly offensively.
Started slowly offensively. You know, of course, we
MVP
dominated on
was your,
defense.
Yeah, the MVP was your defense and your punter.
Yeah.
Stoner.
So, you know, Griffin Tucker on the D-line, Lucas Allgett on the D-line, those guys played exceptionally well. And then, of course, you can't talk about that group without talking about Lucas Thomas. Led us in tackles, you know, and did a fantastic job, you know.
That kid had like 100 tackles.
Yeah,
2 or 3 years in a row.
We didn't know what we were getting with him when he started as a sophomore. And we didn't really know what we were getting with him, but, I mean, he played his rear end off. And, you know, of course, a guy like Griffin Tucker, he's occupying 2 blocks on every play at least, and most of the time fighting through those blocks. And, you know, the season starts out a little rough. We start out slow offensively, and then I remember Madison gave us everything we wanted. Probably should have beaten us. And, you know, I'm not one for movie lines, by no means. But I tell those guys at the end of the game, I'm not going to allow you and our coaching staff is not going to allow you to play like this. You're not living up to your potential. You've got all the potential in the world, but potential is a French word that means you haven't done anything yet. And we kind of turned up the heat on those guys. And I'm not going to say that telling them that changed anything, but we certainly coached a little bit harder after that. And we kind of got their attention a little bit. And I remember we didn't really have any runaway games this past season where, it was a running clock by the first quarter or anything like that. But we played really well the rest of the season and took care of business. And, we were battle tested. We played a tough schedule for a 1A football team. Get to the playoffs, and of course, as luck would have it, we draw Springs Valley. And I think at the time in the coaches polls, they were ranked like 6th or 7th. But if you look at the high school rating system, which used to be called calpreps.com, they were ranked like 3rd, and we were ranked 2nd, right behind North Judson. And the gap between us and Springs Valley wasn't that large. So, we were very well aware that this team could play ball and that we better play really good football because, we were playing a state caliber team, round 1. So that ends up being a very good game. I'll never forget Preston hitting Nick on what everybody labeled a Hail Mary. It really wasn't. We were gonna be content to just take the curl route and see what happens if we caught it and ran.
This is right at the end of the half.
Right at the end of the half against Springs Valley, and we're up 14-0 at the time. Defense was playing lights out. Griffin Tucker, Lucas Allgood, Lucas Thomas, Wyatt Small. Those guys are just playing their hearts out. Hudson Abel comes in and gives us valuable minutes. And offensively, we're moving the ball. We're just not overly explosive at the time. And then, we hit that play. We hit Nick Stoner on a wheel route. And I think Springs Valley tips it right into his hands, and he catches it and scores. And kind of a backbreaker for him. At that point, they mounted a comeback against us, but 21 points is a lot of. That's a pretty big margin to try to come back in one half,
especially against a defense like you had.
Yeah. And you mentioned the punter. I tell you what, Josh, we're going to be hard pressed to replace Nick Stoner as a punter. Guys like Griffin and Lucas Thomas and Lucas Allgood and Wyatt. You don't really try to replace those guys because you can't replace them. You're not going to replace a Griffin Tucker. You're not going to replace a Lucas Allgood. You're not going to replace a Preston Kemp or a Cooper Ross. You just hope that guys can step up and be their own players and hopefully get you some production that's close to what they are. But like Nick Stoner punting the way he did, the kicking game was a weapon for us because we knew as an offense, as long as we could push the ball to the 25 or the 30, Nick could flip the field and pin the opposing offense down. And it's hard to drive, 80, 85 yards against our defense. So we're going to be hard-pressed to replace Nick as a punter. He ended up setting the state record for punting average. I think it was 51.5 or 50.5 or something to that effect. He kicked 2 punts and averaged 50 yards. And that's college-level punting. And that's going to be hard to replace. The kicking game was certainly a weapon for us. I think I got really sidetracked there with what I was talking about.
We're going through the postseason. Regional, semi-state.
So we go through our sectional, and then Milan's waiting on us in the regional. And we had played them every time we play Milan. I always give their coaching staff credit because you can tell they may not always have the talent, but they definitely coach their rear ends off because you can look at the plays that they run on offense and the adjustments they make on defense, that they watch film and they have game planned for you. Their coach Ryan Langferman, always does a good job of attacking our weaknesses and defending our strengths. He really did a good job of making us play left-handed. So that game ended up coming it didn't come down to the wire, but it was a close game. Preston played his rear end off. He took a quarterback sneak. We were content to just get some breathing room and run out the clock. And he takes a quarterback sneak 97 yards for a touchdown. And I think it was one of those situations for Milan where they kind of fell asleep thinking the other guy's going to make the play because he bounces off of a linebacker and he's gone. Nobody had a chance then. Thankfully, we got Milan at home for the regional. Ended up getting South Putnam at home for the regional, and that game was freezing cold. I think the game time temp was like 24
'Cause
degrees.
as the schedule would fall, unlucky for you guys, you had to go to Indy Lutheran both times.
Yeah.
In the regional the previous year.
Yeah, and Coach Davidson on our staff does a good job of, okay, if this happens, we'll be at home. If this happens, we'll be away. My mind doesn't work well enough to try to figure any of that out. Just tell me where we're going. Just game week, tell me where to go and tell me where to schedule the buses. But we end up drawing South Putt at home, and freezing cold game. And I have coached in like male versus Trinity games. I've coached in male versus St. X games. I've coached in 6A state championship games. That atmosphere against South Putt was the best coaching atmosphere I've ever been involved with. Our stands were packed. There were people standing on the track, standing room only. Just an awesome atmosphere for our semifinal game. And again, like Preston gets and deserves all the praise and credit that has come his way. But it was truly a team effort. Preston made plays, but I'm telling you, our defense, we picked their quarterback off 4 times.
Yeah, was it Wyatt Small who had a big INT? Late?
Wyatt had the one that closed the game out.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you, Josh, Wyatt doesn't make that play if Preston Kempf doesn't run, because we put Preston in on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Unruh gets hurt and can't play that game, so Johnny Football played a little defense that game, and they end up running a screen on us. Their last drive, they end up running a screen, dip it out there to their running back, and he makes some guys miss. Actually, makes Preston miss, and you can see it on film. Preston is on his rear end after he misses the tackle. The running back is down the right sideline and ends up cutting back to the left, and the whole time you see Preston just hauling rear end trying to get to him. And Preston ends up, he's gone. Their running back is going to score. Mm-hmm. And Preston ends up diving and making kind of a shoestring tackle and tripping him up. Mm-hmm. I think they're our 25 or 30. And I think it's 1 or 2 plays later, Wyatt makes that interception. Mm-hmm. So, you talk about big plays. Preston makes a big play on defense. Wyatt makes a big play on defense. Noah Frossard played out of his mind that night. And we had some guys step up at the end of the game that normally played offense, like Austin Chanley. Normally was up until that point was an offensive guy only.
Yeah, your starting center.
Yep,
Yeah.
Steps up and plays defense for us on that final drive, and that was really, the whole season was a team effort, but especially that game, just absolute team effort. And Nick punted really well that night. I think he caught a touchdown. I think he had a one-handed touchdown catch that game. Hudson Abel, I think, either that game or the Milan game, catches an arrow, a flat route for a touchdown, takes it in. And, just you look at every starter, every player on that team in some way contributed, whether it was a scout team rep, stepping up and making a play when their number was called, what have you. Just, and a lot of our stars get the credit that they deserve. But you look at team effort, and it was just phenomenal those last 6 weeks of the playoff run.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it concludes in Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah, that whole experience, that whole week was just something I'll remember forever because, we go up to Indy that Monday for the meeting. Mm-hmm. Mr. Falcons is running that meeting, and we have to drive all the way up to Indy. We take 4 players with us. We took Griffin Tucker, Lucas Allgood, Preston, and I think Nick. No, but Lucas Thomas was the 4th player. And, those guys are giving interviews. They're recording the pregame hype video. It was a cool experience for those guys. I think they got the kind of the superstar treatment, which was cool for them. And they got to tour Lucas Oil. There's a picture of us standing out there on Lucas Oil Field, the 4 of us, plus me and Coach Leeser and Mr. Beeler. Just a really cool experience all around. And then, we finally get back, and it's time to practice. Tuesday, Wednesday practices were phenomenal. Thanksgiving morning practice is something I'll never forget because our parents went all out for us. We had breakfast at like 6 o'clock that morning, and our parents are up there.
And this is something you'd gotten used to at Mayo, right?
Yeah. I had experienced it a couple times at Mayo, and I told our guys before the season started, my goal is to have Thanksgiving breakfast together. So our parents went all out. We had parents out there with smokers and grills. They hooked them up to the trailers and brought them to Providence, and they're cooking pancakes and cooking sausage and cooking bacon, and just went above and beyond all season long, but especially that day. Just a phenomenal experience for our guys. And you know, my dad gets up there and talks to the team, and he's got his notes, and his notes are that thick. And then our practice, we invited Providence football alumni out to practice, and I think we had about 100 guys come out and watch Thanksgiving morning practice, and it's 20 degrees outside. And you know, and it's a funny story. I actually told it at our youth camp this morning. We have a drill that we call AAP, Alignment Assignment Pursuit, and that's kind of like our drill as a defense. That's kind of the drill that we hang our hat on. If there was a drill that we said that's us, it's that AAP drill. So that Thursday morning, I'm thinking, you know, our guys have had 3 hard practices. We're going to come out and we're just going to kind of do a walkthrough and take it easy on their legs. And Lucas Allgood is like mad at me. Said, Coach, we got all these alumni out here and you didn't script AAP. Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, was legitimately upset with me because that's our drill. How do we not do our drill on the most important, on not necessarily the most important practice, but on the biggest practice of the year? You didn't script AAP? Are you kidding me? So we ended up scripting in AAP, and you know, I remember Jeff Perica, my defensive coordinator, coming to me and saying, North Judson better be really good or we're going to have a great day. It's going to be a great day to be a Pioneer. Because guys were getting after it on the Thursday. I mean, it looked like a Monday practice. Our guys were just flat getting after it in that drill. And, you know, of course, we break for Thanksgiving dinner and let our guys kind of go on about their way. And we ended up leaving Friday afternoon because our game was Saturday morning.
First one.
Yep, the first one. And that I was worried a little bit about, you know, guys getting out of their routine for that. But they adapted really well and ended up, you know, North Judson was good, but our guys played really well. And, you know, Preston, I think, set a touchdown record, most touchdowns in a game. He accounted for 5 total, 4 running and 1 passing. But if you look at our O-line, they blocked their rear ends off. I mean, North Judson had a nose guard that's going to UIndy, and they've got a 6'7" defensive end that will probably go to play college football as well. And, you know, 2 linebackers that were unreal athletes. Preston gets a lot of credit, as he should, but that was a team effort. Our O-line blocked their rear ends off. And Cooper Ross made 11 tackles during the game, and he had 1 run where, I mean, it kind of set the tone for the game. It was an early run.
Because you all got behind there because
we fumbled. I don't want to sound arrogant here, but that was a fluke. That play was where we fumbled in the end zone was 1,000% on me because I had the wrong personnel in the game. And that gave them a little bit of too much momentum, but we ended up settling down and played a really good football game. But Cooper, we ended up running buck sweep to Cooper, and you know, he breaks to the secondary, and safety comes up to try to tackle him, and Cooper just kind of boom pushes him back on his rear end, and I think he ends up gaining 7 or 8 yards, and that kind of set the tone for the whole game. You know, because North Judson kind of prided themselves on being a real physical football team, but you know, that was kind of our way of saying we're here too. And that whole game, man, looking back on it now, and I've watched it a couple times over again on the IHSAA network, but the whole game's kind of a blur, and it's just, you know, you can pick moment after moment of guys just making plays when it mattered. You know, the halftime score, I had no intention of running that play. I was perfectly content to kick the field goal there. Let time expire, go up by 2 scores, and again, Lucas Allgood looks at me and goes, "Are you serious?" You know, Preston Kemp looks at, "Are you kidding me right now, Coach? Let's score."
Because how many yards? I can't remember.
Like 2 or 3.
Oh, yeah.
But common sense tells you just take the points. It's not worth the risk of an interception for a touchdown or a fumble or not scoring. It's not worth the risk there. Kick the field goal, take the points, and go into halftime with a 2-score lead. But you know, I'm a firm believer in that. If your kids are that adamant about a decision, let them make the call. Let your kids take ownership of your program. And I said, all right, you all want it. We have a 2-point play that we practice all the time. Run it. And they executed really well. So we go in to half up, I think 21-6 or something to that effect, and came out the second half and played really well. Preston had a great run where he spins off a defender, cuts back like 3 times and scores. And we had some sophomores step up too, or freshmen at the time. Jorge Reyes, Reyes Nino steps up and he plays D-line. He didn't play D-line all season. Has a tackle for a loss in a huge moment. Kalen Sipes is normally a linebacker, running back. We threw him down at defensive end just because we needed the athleticism there. Because as big as North Judson was, they lacked a little bit of athleticism from the tackle spots. And he played his rear end off, and that's what one of the things I'm most impressed about a lot of the Providence student athletes is they're ultimately going to do what's best for the team. It's the team. And we tell Jorge, we need you to play D-line. Okay, coach, got it. We tell Kalen, we need you to play some D-line this week. No problem, I'll do it. We've had this offseason already where we're moving a guy like Jake Glotzback, who's a pretty darn good tight end, down to offensive line because that's where the team needs him. Was he overly happy about it? I don't think so. But ultimately he said, yeah, I'll do it because that's what the team needs. If you have that kind of unselfishness and a lot of guys saying it's not about me, it's about Providence, you're going to be successful. And that was, that's the culture that I'm proud of our staff for building from the ground up. But that state championship, and we end up winning, and we end up getting a grand reception upon our return. I mean, they basically shut down Lewis and Clark for our bus to go through. And you have people pulling over, honking their horns, leaning out their car windows, waving at us as the bus goes by. I mean, those are moments that I'm really happy our guys got to experience. Hopefully they'll never forget those little moments like that. I think, what's the golf course up in the Knobs Valley? Valley View. It ends up opening up their clubhouse for us to come in and have kind of a post-game celebration. I mean, it's midnight, 1 o'clock. I'm just ready to go home. But, God love them. They end up opening up for us, and we have a good time there. And, and it feels like that celebration lasted several months. And, I'm very grateful to the Providence community, our players, our families. I mean, it was a full team effort. And I'm not usually very comfortable getting the recognition. I know I won Coach of the Year. You all gave me the NETSB award, and I greatly appreciate that stuff. But I'm not always very comfortable receiving that stuff because I understand, I just kind of tell people, let's go here, and then we have just such great administrative support, community support, parent support. It's a total team effort there.
You mentioned it was a long time coming, so I mean maybe that was why the celebration lasted so long. Providence has been to the state championship twice before and lost, and this was the first one in program history, as we mentioned before. A long history, most of it under Gene Sartini. So I mean it had to be just a moment to celebrate at that point for Providence and just the whole Providence community.
Yeah, and the way our community turned out at Lucas Oil, you would have thought it was a 4 or 5 or 6A football game. I mean, our community turned out. Everybody was wearing white shirts, and I know those are moments that I'll never forget. Just absolutely awesome. Hopefully we can get there again this year.
And having your family, were your boys on the sideline? I don't even know.
Landon was on the sideline. Landon was a ball boy for me, and then Coach Parker's son was there with us, Liam. So that was really cool. I'll tell you what's cool is when Liam's a senior, Landon will be a freshman. So that'll be really neat. And I know I'm going to blink and it'll be here with us. So just such an amazing experience that whole season last year. I mean, first totally undefeated season for Providence. That was awesome.
You mentioned one thing that we've got to talk about. It's your offensive line. I don't know how you guys do it. You can tell me, but you guys just find these guys out of the hallways and turn them into offensive linemen, and a big huge part of your team.
Yeah, we've Neil Biggs does a really good job with our offensive line, and we had kind of made a habit of finding guys who wanted to work hard. You talk about Carter Landon's class. Well, those linemen don't get enough attention either. I mean, we had Gavin Evans who, until he got to Providence and hadn't really played football, worked hard, became a serviceable player. Sam Beck. We do this thing at Providence where we deliver yard signs to incoming freshmen, and I've got a picture of me and Sam Beck, and he does not look like a football player. But he comes out as a sophomore and works his rear end off, and ends up growing into a pretty serviceable, pretty good football player. And Neil Biggs does a really good job with those guys. The work ethic is always there.
And was it all good from this last team who hadn't played football before?
Yeah, Lucas Allgood hadn't played football before either, and now he's a college football player. He's going to Hanover. So we kind of always say if a kid will work hard at our level, we'll turn them into a good football player. If they'll work hard and they'll be coachable and they'll play hard, we can make them good football players. So the O-line moving forward, we got Austin Chanley coming back, and he's done a good job this offseason of maturing and realizing, like, this is it. Like, he's a senior now, and he wants to be successful. He's done a good job this offseason on his leadership, and he's worked hard. Probably will start 2 sophomores next to him at guards, maybe a junior. And then at the tackles, we could have 2 juniors. We could have a junior and a sophomore. We could have 2 sophomores. Who knows? But we'll be young in the sense that, they're freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. But Jorge is a sophomore now. He started as a freshman last year. If Jake Glotzback ends up working into that starting role in the O-line, he played a lot of defense last year as a freshman, as a 170-pound defensive lineman, and was productive. Zach Medlock is a junior, played a lot as a sophomore, and played really well as a sophomore. So, these guys are young on paper, but we bring some experience with us. Now, we'll have our sophomore growing pains. And hopefully our guys can grow up sooner rather than later, because that schedule coming forward is an absolute gauntlet. We start off with New Albany, which is, I know a lot of people in the area are really excited about that series getting going again. Week 2 is Holy Cross.
It's always been a great
Holy Cross is always a great game. Those guys, the schools are very similar. Small co-ed Catholic schools. They're a 1A football program. That we're a 1A football program. I really think the world of their head coach. We got into a bit of a it was Connor Sad's senior year. Got into a bit of a shouting match with some of their players back and forth. But other than that, we've had nothing but good experiences with them, even in losses. Like, it's always a hard-fought game.
One of your most painful losses probably was a couple of years ago with the tipped ball at the end of the game.
Yeah, because that
that was
that would have been that was the 8-3 year. That was our first sectional, and that was the quarterback rolls out, has nowhere to go, rolls out. He's like that far away from the sideline and just launches it up. And as soon as he launches it, I said, "Oh no," because he threw it across the field to a wide open receiver, and it's just those are one of those plays that'll haunt you. But that's always a good game with them. Whether one team is good or bad or not, that's always a good game.
Yeah.
I think we're at Cardinal Ritter, and in the month of September we're not at home. That's just kind of the way the schedule works out this year. And Cardinal Ritter's on the schedule. Cecina. Those are 2 good Catholic school programs. Madison will be improved. I don't know what Clarksville brings, but I know Jason Hawkins is a good coach. Charlestown will probably be pretty improved. It's just you look at our schedule, it's like good game, good game, good game. There are no games where we can sit back on our haunches and say we're good. So, but I tend to believe that you want to have a tough regular season schedule to prepare your guys for the playoffs. so I don't think other than Holy Cross, I don't think there are any 1A teams on our schedule. It's a bunch of 2A, 3A. Is Charlestown 3 or 4 now?
4.
So, and obviously New Albany's a 5A program, and we start right out the gate with them. So, I'm excited about our schedule. There's a little bit of angst there because it is such a tough schedule, but ultimately I think it will prepare us for a good postseason run.
Yeah, you mentioned target on the back earlier. You guys, it'll be squarely on you guys in Class A this year.
Yeah, and I think we're at a point in our program now where that's just kind of the expectation, and that's the standard. That's the standard that those guys from last year kind of set. Looking back to that first group, Jackson Murphy, Jeremy Gettlefinger, David Wall, Carson Heldman, that bunch, they kind of laid that foundation and set that standard, and then we've just built on it every year. So, I would like to think that as a program we're at the point now where, and not to sound cliche, but, tradition doesn't graduate. You've heard that phrase before. But I'd like to think that we're kind of at that point now as a program where, we're going to graduate a lot of good football players, but, we've got good football players coming up too. And where Indy Lutheran is now is where I'd like for our program to continue to be. Where they graduate a lot of talent every year, but lo and behold, this new kid comes in and he's a senior that's never really played before, but dang, he's good too, and he just picks right back up where the other guy left off. So I'm really looking forward to this season. We have some pups. We have some unproven pups up there that we're kind of counting on to be good. Nico Fondrisi is going to take over as the quarterback. He's just a sophomore, but he throws a really good ball. That kid can sling it. We're looking at a receiving core that's the deepest receiving core I've had. You have Noah Leeser out there he's every bit of 6'5", if not 6'6". He's going to be tough for some teams to cover. And Jacob Evans is every bit of 6'2", 6'3". Hudson Lannon 6'2". Noah Frostard 6 feet tall. Gabriel Bermudez made several good plays in the state championship. He's 6'1", 6'2", pretty good athlete. Can't not talk about Pete Lannon. I mean, he's a tight end, defensive end. He's 6'1", pretty athletic. Apparently had a really good summer with the basketball team. I mean, dunking with ease now.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
He claims he can windmill. he swears that he can windmill. I'd love to see it. So Trevor Unruh, Mason Went. I mean, all these guys that we can throw in to give us some good reps at receiver. I'm really excited about those guys. The running back stable. Kalen Sipes is looking to get a full season now. Lincoln Kruger, you can't not talk about Lincoln. Absolute force on defense, and then comes in at running back. And Lincoln's one of those rare breeds that if there's a play where he's blocking, he'd rather be in the game. And I appreciate that. Every team needs that guy that just wants to come in and hit. And then Trenton Taylor is another sophomore that we're looking for. He's got kind of that next gear that you don't see a lot of. I can't not talk about Lucas Mock. He's gonna be a jack of all trades on offense. He may be a receiver, he may be a running back. We may throw him in at quarterback. Just really looking forward to. There's a lot of potential there with our team. But it's time for these young pups to go out and prove it. It's time for these seniors to prove. And this is a metaphor that we've used a lot. When you're a junior, you're kind of in that alley fight, but you've got Big Brother there with you. So now that you're a senior and Big Bubby's not there anymore, what are you going to do? Are you going to be the guy? And I think we've got that senior class where these guys, can step up and be the guy. One thing I'm really looking forward to is Blake Strube is playing football again. He took last season off to really focus on baseball and. He's a really good baseball player, but he's also a really good football player. So I'm really glad that he's back. So this senior group has the makings to be a very special group, and we've got the juniors and sophomores and even the freshmen to come in and really be good for us too. So cautiously optimistic with this group.
Well, it should be a fun season. Daniel, I can't thank you enough for your time. and look forward to the season.
I appreciate you giving me the platform here, Josh.